The observation station floated in the darkness between stars. Its sensors pointed toward a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. Ambassador Kethril pressed his face closer to the viewing screen, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he watched the chaos unfold below. "This is the 3rd extinction-level event in 200 cycles," he said, his voice quiet with something that might have been wonder or horror. "How are they still alive?" The station's lead scientist, a being called Vornes, stood beside him. Her scales rippled with colors that showed her discomfort. "They should not be. By every calculation, by every model we have, the human species should have ended 40,000 of their years ago. And yet—" On the screen, a massive asteroid had struck the planet's surface. The impact had thrown dust and debris into the atmosphere. Fires burned across entire continents. The readings showed that temperatures would drop severely in the coming months. Food would become impossible to grow. Water would freeze. Kethril had seen this before. He had watched other species face such events. They always ended the same way. The survivors would fight over what remained. Their numbers would fall. Within a few generations, they would be gone. "Begin recording," he ordered. "The Federation Council will want documentation of another failed species. Perhaps we can learn something from their final days." But that was not what happened. The first thing that surprised the observers was the speed. Within hours of the impact, humans began to organize. They did not spend time in despair or denial. They did not turn on each other immediately as so many species did. Instead, they started counting what they had left. "Are you seeing this?" Vornes asked, her scales now bright with confusion. "They are sharing resources with strangers. That group just gave half their food supply to another group they have never met." Kethril watched as humans formed chains to move supplies. He watched as they dug shelters deep into the ground. He watched as they collected seeds, preserved knowledge, protected their young. All of this happened while the sky still burned above them. "It makes no sense," he said. "Competition for limited resources should create conflict. This is basic survival theory." "Perhaps they do not know the theory," Vornes replied, and there was something strange in her voice, almost like respect. The months that followed were terrible to watch. The temperature dropped as predicted, crops died, animals that humans depended on for food began to disappear. The population fell sharply. By the Federation's calculations, the species would be extinct within 20 years. But the humans did not die. They adapted. They found new ways to grow food in the darkness. They learned which plants could survive the cold. They developed methods to preserve meat for years at a time. When one solution failed, they tried another, and another, and another. Kethril spent long hours at the observation screen, neglecting his other duties. He could not look away from what was happening below. He watched mothers give their last food to their children. He watched strangers carry wounded people through frozen wastelands. He watched old men teach young ones how to make fire, how to hunt, how to survive. "They should be fighting," he said to himself one night. "They should be killing each other for scraps. Why are they not fighting?" Vornes heard his question and came to stand beside him. She had been watching too, unable to stop herself. "I think I understand now," she said slowly. "They are pack animals, social creatures. When danger comes, they do not scatter, they come together. But that behavior should disappear when resources are scarce. Evolution demands it. Perhaps evolution works differently on their world. Perhaps the ones who helped each other survived more often than the ones who did not." Kethril considered this. It was a strange idea, but it fit what he was seeing. The humans who worked together were surviving. The ones who tried to hoard resources or fight for territory were dying. It was as if cooperation was built into their very nature. "How long have you been watching this planet?" he asked Vornes. "Since before my hatching. My mother watched before me, and her mother before her. This species has been our assignment for many generations." And you have never seen anything like this. Never. We have watched them face many challenges before, but nothing this severe. I expected them to die this time. I truly did. On the screen below, a group of humans had found a cave. They were carrying their sick and wounded inside, working together to build fires and prepare shelter. One of them, a young female, was organizing the others with quick gestures and urgent words. She moved with confidence, with purpose. She moved like someone who believed they were going to survive. I want to meet them someday, Kethril said quietly. I want to understand how they think. Vorney's scales shifted to a darker shade. That is not our way. We observe. We do not interfere. I know, but still. He watched the young human female directing the others, and he felt something he had never felt for a subject species before. He felt admiration. The years passed slowly. Kethril filed his reports. He documented the recovery, the rebuilding, the slow return of human civilization. The population grew. New settlements appeared. The humans spread across their world once more, as if the asteroid had never happened. They lost 90% of their population, he reported to the Federation Council, his voice carrying through the communication array to 1,000 different worlds. But the remaining 10% has stabilized. They are rebuilding. The Council was not pleased with this news. Not because they wished humans harm, but because it challenged everything they believed about how life worked. Impossible, declared High Counselor Menth. No species can recover from such losses. The genetic diversity alone would be insufficient for long-term survival. And yet they survive, Kethril replied. I am watching them right now. They have established permanent settlements. They are having children. They are teaching those children to read and write. There was a long silence on the communication channel. Kethril could imagine the council members looking at each other, trying to understand what they were hearing. Continue observation, High Counselor Menth said finally. Report any significant developments. This species may be more interesting than we thought. The Federation had been watching Earth for a long time. They had first detected signs of intelligence on the planet roughly 200,000 years ago, when humans first began using complex tools. The decision was made to observe and wait. The Federation did not interfere with developing species. This was their most sacred law. But they had never expected to observe what they were seeing now. Over the next several thousand years, the humans rebuilt their civilization. They spread across the planet again. Their population grew. They developed new technologies, new arts, new ways of understanding their world. It was as if the extinction event had never happened. Kethril grew old watching them. His fur turned gray and his movement slowed. But he never stopped watching. He saw humans learn to farm. He saw them build cities. He saw them develop writing and mathematics and philosophy. He saw them ask questions about the stars. Someday they will find us, he said to Vorney's, who had also grown old. Someday they will reach the stars, and they will want to know if they are alone. If they survive that long, Vorney's replied. There are many dangers between here and there. As if to prove her point, the second extinction event came just a few centuries later. This time it was a supervolcano. The explosion was so large that it could be seen from the observation station. Ash filled the atmosphere. The effects were similar to the asteroid: darkness, cold, death. Now we will see their true nature, said a new observer named Thiel, who had replaced Vorney's after her retirement. Surely they cannot survive this twice. But they did. Once again the humans organized. Once again they shared resources. Once again they found ways to grow food in impossible conditions. And once again they rebuilt. Kethril, now very old by his species' standards, watched this second recovery with something approaching awe. They do not give up, he said. No matter what happens to them, they do not give up. It is more than that, Thiel observed. They help each other. Look at this data. Individuals are sacrificing their own chances of survival to help others. This behavior should not exist. Evolution should have eliminated it. But it had not been eliminated. It was the very thing that kept humans alive. The observation records from this period showed remarkable examples of human behavior. A group of hunters who gave up their catch to feed a neighboring village. A woman who walked for days through frozen wasteland to bring medicine to strangers. A man who died holding open a shelter door so others could escape a collapsing tunnel. They call this sacrifice, Kethril said, studying the translation of human language his team had been developing. They consider it one of their highest values. It is inefficient, Thiel said. From a survival standpoint, it makes no sense. And yet here they are surviving, again. The Federation continued to watch as thousands more years passed. Human civilization rose again. This time it grew faster than before. They developed writing, mathematics, science. They built cities that impressed even the ancient Federation observers. And then for the third time, disaster struck. This time it was a plague. A disease spread across the human world with terrible speed. It killed without discrimination, young and old, strong and weak. The population fell by more than half. Kethril, who had somehow lived long enough to see this third catastrophe, felt something he had never expected to feel: fear. Not fear for himself, but fear for the humans. He had watched them for so long now that he had come to care about their fate. "We should help them," he said to the council. "We have medicine that could stop this disease. We have technology that could save millions of lives." "Absolutely not," High Counselor Menth replied. His voice carried the weight of ancient law. "We do not interfere, you know this." "But they are dying." "All species die, Ambassador. That is the nature of life. If humans are meant to survive, they will do so on their own. If they are not, then we must accept that outcome." Kethril wanted to argue more, but he knew it was pointless. The law was the law. It had been in place for millions of years. He was not going to change it now. So he watched. He watched humans die by the millions. He watched cities empty and fall silent. He watched as the survivors burned their dead because there was no other way to stop the spread. And then, just as before, he watched them fight back. They developed medicine. It was crude compared to Federation technology, but it worked. They established quarantine zones. They learned which behaviors spread the disease and which did not. Within a few generations, they had defeated the plague entirely. 3 times, Kethril said to himself as he watched humans rebuild once more. 3 extinction events, 3 recoveries. This is not normal. This is not possible, but it is happening. He began to compile his observations into a formal report. The Federation needed to understand what was happening on this small blue planet. They needed to prepare for the possibility that humanity might one day reach the stars. Because if they did, if they brought this incredible resilience, this stubborn refusal to die, this instinct to help each other in times of crisis, then the galaxy would never be the same. The centuries that followed brought more challenges. Humans fought wars among themselves. They poisoned their own air and water. They came close to destroying their civilization multiple times through their own actions rather than natural disasters. Each time the Federation observers expected collapse. Each time they were proven wrong. They are their own worst enemy and their own best hope, Thiel noted in one of his many reports. They cause problems that should destroy them, and then they solve those problems in ways we never imagined possible. By the time humans developed nuclear technology, the Federation was deeply concerned. Here was a species that had survived asteroid impacts and supervolcanoes and plagues, and now they had created weapons that could destroy their entire planet in an instant. They will use these weapons, High Counselor Menth predicted. They are too violent, too aggressive, too divided. They will destroy themselves. Kethril, still somehow alive through medical technology that he had once refused to share with humans, disagreed. They might use them, he admitted, but they might also choose not to. We have been wrong about them before. And they were wrong again. Humans built their terrible weapons, and then they chose not to use them. Oh, there were close calls, moments when the observers held their breath and waited for the end. But each time, somehow, humanity pulled back from the edge. They call it mutual assured destruction, Thiel explained to the council. They have created a situation where using their weapons would guarantee their own death. It is preventing them from using the weapons at all. That is insane, Counselor Minth said. Perhaps, Thiel agreed, but it is working. The observation continued. Humans developed computers, space travel, artificial intelligence. They cured diseases that had once killed millions. They extended their lifespans. They reached their moon and began to dream of reaching other planets. Kethril spent his final years preparing a document that he hoped would change everything. It was a detailed analysis of human history, focusing on their remarkable ability to survive and recover from catastrophic events. He included data, statistics, and personal observations. He argued that humanity was unlike any species the Federation had ever encountered. When a species demonstrates this level of resilience, he wrote in his conclusion, we should not wait for them to come to us. We should be ready to welcome them as equals. We should offer them immediate aid, not because they need it, but because they have earned it. The document was controversial. Many council members argued that it violated the principle of non-interference. Others worried about what humanity might do if given access to Federation technology. A few even suggested that humans were too dangerous to welcome at all. But Kethril had supporters too. Other observers who had watched Earth over the centuries and had come to share his admiration for the human spirit. Scientists who were fascinated by their unique evolutionary path. Philosophers who believed that the Federation could learn from human values like sacrifice and hope. The debate went on for decades. Kethril did not live to see its conclusion, but before he died, he recorded his final thoughts and stored them in the great archives. I have watched humanity for most of my life, he said into the recording device. I have seen them face death and choose life. I have seen them face despair and choose hope. I have seen them face isolation and choose community. They are flawed, yes. They are violent and selfish and often foolish. But they are also brave and kind and impossibly stubborn. When I die, I want my last thought to be of them. I want to believe that someday they will reach the stars. And when they do, I hope we will be ready to welcome them home. The recording ended. Kethril's consciousness was stored in the archives, as was the custom for all Federation citizens, and the debate about humanity continued. But change was coming. Even the most conservative council members could not ignore the evidence. Humanity was growing stronger, smarter, more capable every year. They were reaching toward the stars with both hands. It was only a matter of time before they arrived. And when they did, the Federation would have to make a choice. Would they treat humans as they treated every other species, with distance and caution and careful observation, or would they try something different? The answer, when it came, surprised everyone. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the S-Discovery, humanity's first interstellar vessel, and stared at the alien station hanging in space before them. It was massive, larger than any structure humans had ever built. Lights flickered across its surface in patterns that might have been random or might have been intentional. The journey to this point had taken everything humanity had: decades of research, trillions of dollars, the combined effort of every nation on Earth. But they had done it. They had built a ship that could travel faster than light, and they had crossed the vast emptiness between stars. "We're being hailed," her communications officer reported. "Universal translation is working somehow. They say we should dock at the central port." Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. first contact, proof that they were not alone in the universe. "Take us in," she ordered. The docking process was smooth. The alien station's technology seemed designed to accommodate ships of any size or configuration. Within minutes, the Discovery was secured, and an airlock had formed between the vessel and the station. Sarah led the first contact team personally. There were 6 of them, scientists, diplomats, and soldiers, representing the best humanity had to offer. They walked through the airlock together, not knowing what awaited them on the other side. What they found was light, warm, golden light filling a vast chamber, and in that chamber stood beings of a dozen different shapes and sizes, all watching them with expressions that might have been curiosity, hope, or welcome. One being stepped forward. It was tall and thin, with 4 arms and 4 eyes, covered in what looked like soft purple fur. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, translated by technology beyond human understanding. "Captain Sarah Chen of Earth," it said. "I am Ambassador Vornes III, named for my ancestor who first observed your planet. On behalf of the Galactic Federation, I welcome you. We have been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Sarah didn't know what to say. She had prepared speeches, practiced diplomatic phrases, studied everything humanity knew about potential alien contact scenarios. But none of that had prepared her for the warmth in the ambassador's voice, the genuine pleasure that seemed to radiate from every being in the room. "Thank you," she managed. "We are honored to meet you. We have many questions." "Of course you do," Vornes said, "and we will answer all of them. But first I have something to show you, something we believe you have earned the right to see." Vornes led the human delegation through corridors of gleaming metal and soft light. Other aliens watched them pass, some with obvious curiosity, others with what might have been awe. Sarah noticed that several of them seemed to move aside respectfully, as if making way for something important. They entered a smaller chamber. The walls were covered with screens, each showing images that Sarah slowly recognized as Earth. But not the Earth she knew, an older Earth, a more primitive Earth. "What is this?" she asked. "This is the observation record," Vornes explained. 200,000 years of human history recorded by Federation observers. Every triumph, every tragedy, every moment that brought your species closer to extinction, and every moment that pulled you back. Sarah watched in silence as the screens showed scenes from humanity's past. She saw the asteroid impact that had nearly destroyed everything. She saw the volcanic winter that followed the Great Eruption. She saw the plague that had emptied cities across the ancient world. And she saw something else. She saw humans helping each other, sharing food with strangers, carrying the weak when they could not walk, building shelters together, fighting back against impossible odds. "Why are you showing us this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because we want you to understand why we made the decision we made," Vornes replied. "When we first detected your species, we assumed you would fail. Every model, every calculation, every piece of data said that you could not survive. And yet you did. Again and again, you survived things that should have destroyed you." The screens shifted to show more recent history: wars, pollution, nuclear standoffs, climate change, all the ways humanity had almost ended itself. "We watched you face every challenge," Vornes continued. "We saw you create problems and solve them. We saw you hurt each other and heal each other. We saw you reach for destruction and pull back at the last moment." "You were watching all of this," Sarah asked, "and you never helped." There was a long pause. Vornes's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, and something in their expression changed. "That is the question we knew you would ask," they said. "And it is the question we have asked ourselves many times. The answer is complicated." Vornes led them to a new section of the observation record. This one showed something different, not humans but other species. Beings of every shape and size, living on worlds scattered across the galaxy. The Federation is very old, Voorhees explained. We have watched thousands of species develop intelligence. We have seen them rise and fall, succeed and fail. And we have learned that interference usually does more harm than good. The screens showed examples. Species that had been given advanced technology before they were ready. Species that had been rescued from natural disasters only to become dependent on outside help. Species that had been shown the truth of the universe too soon and had lost their drive to explore and discover. Every time we intervened, we changed the course of development in ways we did not intend, Voorhees said. Species that should have become strong became weak. Species that should have developed their own solutions became reliant on ours. We learned over millions of years that the best thing we could do was watch and wait. But you're helping us now, Sarah pointed out. Yes, Voorhees agreed. Because you have earned it, not through any test we designed, but through the test that life itself provided. You faced extinction again and again, and you survived through your own strength, your own creativity, your own unity. You proved that you can handle anything the universe throws at you. The screens changed one final time. Now they showed the present. The Discovery docked at the station, the human delegation standing in this very room. When a species demonstrates that level of resilience, Voorhees said, we know they are ready. They do not need our help to survive, they have proven that already, but they deserve our help to thrive. That is why we are offering it now. Sarah looked at her team. They all wore the same expression of stunned wonder. Everything they thought they knew about alien contact, about humanity's place in the universe, had just been turned upside down. What exactly are you offering? She asked. Voorhees smiled, or at least made an expression that the translation software interpreted as a smile. Everything, they said. Access to our knowledge, our technology, our medicine, our understanding of the universe. We offer immediate aid not because you need it, but because you have earned it. You are not joining the Federation as students or subjects. You are joining as equals, as allies, as friends. The news of first contact spread across Earth within hours. At first, many people did not believe it. Humanity had dreamed of meeting aliens for so long, and there had been so many false hopes that many assumed it was another hoax or misunderstanding. But then the broadcasts began. The Federation allowed human news crews to visit the station. They introduced themselves to the cameras, dozens of different species all sharing the same message. Humanity was welcome. Humanity had proven itself. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. They're just giving us their technology, one news anchor asked, struggling to believe what she was reporting. No conditions, no demands. No conditions, Ambassador Voorhees confirmed in an interview that was broadcast to every screen on Earth. We ask only that you use our gifts wisely, but we believe you will because we have seen how you use your own gifts. We have watched you for 200,000 years. We know who you are. Reactions on Earth were mixed. Some people celebrated, others worried. Some religious leaders claimed the aliens were demons in disguise. Some politicians warned that humanity was being manipulated. But most people just felt hope. The first technology transfers began within weeks. Federation medical knowledge cured diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Federation agricultural techniques promised to end hunger forever. Federation energy systems offered clean, unlimited power for every person on the planet. And through it all, the Federation made clear that this was not charity. It was recognition. You survived the asteroid when you should not have survived, they explained. You survived the volcano when you should not have survived. You survived the plague when you should not have survived. You have been tested in ways that most species never experience, and you have passed every test. This is not a gift. It is what you have earned. Captain Chen returned to Earth as a hero, but she always felt uncomfortable with the celebrations. She had not done anything special. She had just been the one who happened to be commanding the first interstellar ship. The real heroes, she thought, were all the humans who had come before her. The ones who had shared their food after the asteroid impact. The ones who had dug shelters in the frozen earth. The ones who had nursed the sick and buried the dead and kept hope alive when there was no logical reason for hope. They were the ones who had earned humanity's place among the stars. She was just the one who got to see the reward. On her first night back on Earth, Sarah walked alone through a quiet park near her childhood home. The stars were bright above her, and for the first time in her life, she knew that they were full of friends. She thought about everything she had learned on the station. 200,000 years of observation, 3 extinction events, 3 recoveries, a species that should have died 100 times over, still alive, still growing, still reaching upward. Why us? She had asked Vornes before leaving. Of all the species in the galaxy, why are we special? Vornes had considered the question carefully. You are not special because you are smart or strong or advanced, they had said. Many species are those things. You are special because of what you do when everything is falling apart. You help each other. You sacrifice for strangers. You hope when there is no reason to hope. We have watched 1,000 species face extinction, and not one of them responded the way you did. Is that really so rare? It is the rarest thing in the universe, and it is why we welcomed you the way we did. Not because you might be useful to us, but because you have something to teach us, something we forgot long ago. Sarah had asked what that something was, but Vornes had only smiled. You will show us, they had said. In time, you will show all of us. Now standing in the park under the stars, Sarah thought she understood. The Federation was ancient and powerful and wise. They had technology beyond human imagination and knowledge that would take centuries to learn. But they had lost something along the way. They had become so careful, so cautious, so afraid of making mistakes that they had forgotten how to take risks. Humanity had never forgotten. Humanity had always taken risks. Sometimes those risks ended badly, wars, plagues, disasters. But sometimes they ended in miracles. Ships that could cross between stars, medicine that could cure any disease, the simple act of sharing food with a stranger when you barely had enough for yourself. That was what humanity had to offer, not technology or knowledge, but courage, hope, the willingness to keep trying even when everything said you should give up. Sarah looked up at the stars and smiled. The future was uncertain as it always had been. There would be new challenges, new disasters, new moments when everything seemed lost. But humanity would face them the same way they had always faced everything, together. And now they had friends to help. In the years that followed, humanity began to spread across the galaxy. Federation worlds welcomed them with open arms. Other species sought them out, curious about this strange race that had survived so much. You are famous, a being called Thiel IV told Captain Chen during one of her many diplomatic missions. Every species knows your story. You are the ones who would not die. We just did what we had to do, Chen replied. Anyone would have done the same. Thiel made a sound that the translation software interpreted as gentle laughter. No, they said. They would not. That is what makes you special. Most species, when faced with extinction, turn on each other. They compete for resources until there is nothing left. They destroy themselves in the process of trying to survive. But not humans. Not humans. Somehow your species evolved the opposite instinct. When things get worse, you help each other more. When resources become scarce, you share what you have. When death comes close, you hold on to each other tighter. Thiel's scales rippled with colors that suggested admiration. It makes no evolutionary sense, but it is why you are here and so many others are not. Chen thought about that for a long time. She thought about all the history lessons she had learned as a child, the disasters, the recoveries, the moments when humanity had come together in the face of impossible odds. She had always thought of those stories as history, as things that happened long ago to people very different from herself. But now she realized that they were something more. They were the reason she was standing here, on an alien world, talking to beings from across the galaxy. Every person who had ever shared their food with a stranger. Every person who had ever carried a wounded friend to safety. Every person who had ever chosen cooperation over conflict, hope over despair, love over fear. They had all contributed to this moment. They had all earned humanity's place among the stars. "Thank you," Chen said to Theo. "For what?" "For watching us, for waiting for us, for believing we would make it." Theo's scales rippled again. "We did not believe," they admitted. "Not at first. We expected you to fail like so many others before you, but you taught us something important, something the Federation needed to learn." "What was that?" "That we do not know everything, that there are forms of strength we do not understand, that hope is sometimes more powerful than calculation." Theo paused. "You taught us that some species are worth waiting for." Chen smiled. It was strange to think of humanity as teachers, as the ones who had something valuable to offer the ancient, advanced Federation. But in a way, it made sense. The Federation had all the technology and knowledge that the universe could offer, but they had forgotten something along the way. They had forgotten what it meant to face impossible odds and refuse to give up. They had forgotten what it meant to help a stranger when you barely had enough for yourself. They had forgotten what it meant to hope. Humanity had remembered. Humanity had never stopped hopping, even when there was no reason to hope. And that was the gift they brought to the stars, not technology or knowledge, but the simple, stubborn belief that things could get better. "So what happens now?" Chen asked. "Now," Theo considered the question, "now we move forward together, the Federation and humanity side by side. We share our knowledge and you share your spirit. We learn from each other and we grow together. And if there are more disasters, more extinction events, more challenges we can't predict." Theo's 4 eyes met hers, and in them she saw something she had never expected to see in an alien: admiration. "Then we face them together," Theo said. "And if you can survive what you have survived, then together we can survive anything." Chen looked out the window at the alien sky. Strange stars shone in unfamiliar patterns, and ships from 100 different worlds moved through the darkness. It was beautiful and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Humanity had finally reached the stars. They had earned their place through suffering and survival, through stubbornness and hope, and now they were ready to see what came next. Whatever it was, they would face it the same way they had always faced everything, together. Because that was who they were. That was what they had always been. Not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the smartest, not the most advanced. Just the ones who refused to give up. The ones who helped each other when times got hard. The ones who kept hopping when there was no reason to hope. The ones who would not die. And in the end, that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. 200 years after first contact, a new observation station floated in the darkness between stars. But this time, it was not watching Earth. It was watching a distant world where a young species was just beginning to develop intelligence. The station was staffed by Federation observers, as always. But now, human scientists worked alongside them. Human diplomats helped make decisions about when and how to act. Human voices were part of every conversation about the future. "They're facing their first major extinction event," Dr. Maya Patel reported, studying the data on her screen. "Massive volcanic activity across the southern continent. The climate is shifting rapidly." Ambassador Vornes V, great-grandchild of the ambassador who had welcomed humanity to the Federation, stood beside her. "What is your assessment?" Maya thought carefully before answering. She thought about everything she had learned, the Federation's policy of non-interference, the reasons behind it, the wisdom of letting species develop on their own. But she also thought about her own history. about the asteroid that should have ended humanity, about the volcano that should have finished what the asteroid started, about the plague that should have been the final blow. And she thought about all the humans who had survived those events, the ones who had shared and hoped and refused to give up. "We should watch," she said finally. "We should wait. We should give them the chance to prove themselves the way we were given that chance. And if they fail?" Maya felt a weight in her chest. It was the same weight that every Federation observer had felt when watching a promising species face extinction. The desire to help, the knowledge that helping might do more harm than good, the terrible uncertainty of not knowing what was right. "Then we will mourn them," she said, "and we will remember them, and we will hope that the next species does better." Vornes nodded slowly. "You have learned our ways." "I've learned that you were right about some things," Maya admitted. "But I've also learned that sometimes intervention is necessary. Sometimes species need help that they cannot provide for themselves." "How do we know the difference?" Maya looked at the screen, at the alien world struggling through its first great crisis. She thought about all the times humanity had almost died, and all the times they had pulled through. "We watch," she said. "We wait, we learn. And when the time is right, when a species has proven that it deserves our help, we offer it immediately. No conditions, no tests, just open arms and a simple welcome." "Like we did with you." "Like you did with us," Maya smiled. "You gave us a gift we can never repay, but we can pass it on. We can watch other species the way you watched us, and when they're ready, we can welcome them the way you welcomed us. And if they are like you, if they survive what should have destroyed them, then we'll have new friends, new allies, new members of the Federation who understand what it means to face extinction and choose to keep living anyway." Vornes was quiet for a long moment. Then they made a sound that the translation software interpreted as satisfaction. "Your species continues to surprise me," they said. "After all these years, I thought I understood you, but you still find new ways to impress." "That's what we do," Maya replied. "We surprise people. We survive things we shouldn't survive. We hope when there's no reason to hope, and we help each other no matter what." She turned back to the observation screen. Below, on a world she would never visit, an alien species was fighting for its survival. They didn't know they were being watched. They didn't know that beings from across the galaxy were hopping for their success. But that was okay. Humanity hadn't known either. They had just done what they needed to do to survive, and in doing so, they had earned their place among the stars. Maybe these aliens would do the same. Maybe they would fail. There was no way to know for certain. But Maya would watch, she would wait, she would hope. Because that was what humanity had always done. And now, finally, they had the chance to share that gift with the universe. The observation screen flickered as new data came in. The young species below had done something unexpected. Instead of fighting over their remaining resources, they had started working together, building shelters, sharing food, caring for their sick and wounded. "Are you seeing this?" Maya asked, her voice quiet with wonder. "I am," Vornes replied. "It appears they may be like you after all." Maya watched as the aliens below organized themselves, forming groups to gather supplies and protect their young. It was exactly what humans had done all those thousands of years ago. The same instinct, the same stubborn refusal to give up. "Maybe we're not as rare as you thought," she said. "Maybe there are other species out there who can do what we did, who can survive the unsurvivable." "Perhaps," Vornes agreed. "But even if there are, you were the first. You were the ones who showed us it was possible. You were the ones who taught us to hope." The Federation watched humans rebuild after extinction events and offered immediate aid. And now, humans watched other species face their own challenges, ready to offer the same welcome they had received. It was the best legacy they could have imagined, the best gift they could give. And somewhere in the great archives where all Federation citizens eventually went, Kethral's recorded consciousness smiled. His recommendation had been accepted. His faith had been justified. Humanity had not just survived. They had thrived. They had joined the Federation as equals, and now they were helping to guide the next generation of species toward the stars. It was, he thought, exactly what he had hoped would happen. It was exactly what humanity deserved. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of challenges that no one could predict. Extinction events would come again, to Earth, to Federation worlds, to species not yet born. That was the nature of existence. That was the price of being alive. But as long as there were beings willing to help each other, willing to share their last crumb of food with a stranger, willing to hope when all hope seemed lost, as long as that spirit existed somewhere in the galaxy, then life would find a way. Humanity had proven that. The Federation had learned from it, and now together they would face whatever came next. Not as observers and subjects, not as teachers and students, but as friends. As family. As the ones who refused to give up. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all.